You're watching CBS 17 Plus.
Hello and welcome once again to this episode of Off the Radar, the very first one of the new month of May. I am meteorologist Matthew Huddleston, joined today by meteorologist Ross Whitley. A lot to talk about over the course of last month and of course the month that is still to come. We're going to cover four main topics in this episode. That starts with this being Hurricane Preparedness Week in North Carolina. Down towards the Gulf Coast states, they are having a Hurricane Hunters Tour. We'll take a look back at the one last year and what they saw in that portion of the country. Of course, as we head further and further into May, this is actually the first full week of May, and we'll end it out talking about our bad drought continuing. Thankfully, some much needed rain chances are likely on the horizon, but still very dry so far this year.
Yeah, it's been extremely dry. I think we've beat that into everyone's
head. In case you didn't know,
point.
Now you do.
In case you're not aware, there's a drought out there, folks. Yes. Hurricane Prep, we're 26 days away. So
it's coming fast.
It's that time of year where we're talking about hurricane season once again. And for those avid weather watchers of the modeling, the GFS gave us an early GFS preview of why it is so cuckoo. It spun up a hurricane yesterday in a 384-hour outlook on the 18Z. So one model run, that means it's definitely happening.
I'm sure somebody out there grabbed it and threw it up on social media.
Oh, you know it.
Got to get those clicks.
That's where I saw it. I saw it on social media. It was like, hey, hurricane in May? No hurricane in May.
And now, of course, we have had hurricanes in May, but thankfully, so far, at least in the medium term, nothing like that is projected anytime soon. But this is, as I said, Hurricane Preparedness Week in North Carolina. It happens every single year. This year, seeing a different topic, as is the case each year. It started back on Sunday, back on May 3rd. We had the first topic of the week. And today's topic for this Wednesday is to get moving. Of course, it's always important that if you have a hurricane bearing down on your area, know where to go, know your evacuation routes. For the rest of this week, it's staying protected. Also, caution after the storm and to take action when necessary whenever a tropical storm or hurricane is coming towards us.
Yeah, something that us here in Central North Carolina, we know we deal with hurricanes, but for the most part, we don't deal with the severity of the coast. We're certainly not worried about inundation from storm surge because we're so far inland. But our biggest issue really being knowing your risk, and that is obviously flooding for the most part. Not to say that we can't have wind events, because we certainly have had wind events in the past. We've had hurricanes maintain Category 3 status through Central North Carolina. Those are the strongest hurricanes that have happened here. So it is very possible to have a significant wind event from a tropical system in Central North Carolina. It's not all that common, but it happens about once every 30 years or so, and it's been a good while since the last time we saw a strong hurricane make its way into Central North Carolina. So every year is the same odds. No matter if it happened last year or the year prior, your odds of being hit directly by a hurricane are identical to the year prior. So you never want to take a season for granted. You never want to look ahead and go, oh, well, it's El Nino. We're not going to have anything. I don't need to worry about it. If you're prepared, if you know all of these topics and you know how to handle all of these topics, then you got nothing to worry about. You just watch the weather forecast, and when the system comes in, you enact your plan. And if you already have the plan, that's exactly how it should go.
Yeah, you don't want to wait until the last second when a storm is actually bearing down on you. You want to go ahead and do it weeks, if not months, in advance. And of course, we talked about this now as we enter towards the peak of hurricane season later on in the year towards August and September. But of course, our first named storm of the season can happen a lot earlier than that. Since back in 2000, we've had one time back in January of 2016 to see our first named storm in January. Much of the activity was April, May, June, July, and August, but in fact, 8 out of the past 26 hurricane seasons have seen our first named storm in this month, and as is to be expected, more happening into June. 10 such dates since back at the turn of the century.
Yeah, June is typically the month that we usually see our first tropical name system. In reality, late June, early July is usually when we get that. And most of the time it's a weak tropical storm or subtropical system, as that's kind of our transition period into what is more of our typical tropical pattern. So not unusual, but certainly not impossible for it to happen in May. And in fact, with El Nino being a big lurker in this forecast for this season, I actually think that the majority of our activity will probably happen June, July, and August. I think by the time we get into September, El Nino's taking over, and typically we start to look at the Caribbean and the Gulf for activity as we get later into the seasons, which usually means more landfalls in the U.S. when those are active basins. But this time around, El Nino really throws a lot of shear across the Gulf and the Caribbean. So I think most of our activity this season is going to happen probably in the subtropics, meaning above the islands in the Caribbean to the north of them, and in the Atlantic, and probably fairly early. So I would be on alert early on for this season. If we're going to get activity, that's probably when we get it.
And of course, one of the most important components each season for getting information to go into computer models are those hurricane hunters. They're on their tour right now down towards the Gulf Coast states. I think this story is from 2025, our affiliate down in Florida. We'll watch that and then talk a bit about that before the first commercial break.
We're here at the NOAA Aircraft Operations Center in Lakeland, Florida, home of the hurricane hunters, and here with Nick Underwood, aerospace engineer. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And tell me a little bit about what we got going on behind us.
Yeah, so this is Kermit. This is one of our two WP-3D Orions. So Kermit rolled off the assembly line in 1975 and started flying storms the next year. And so over 100 hurricanes that this aircraft has been through. There's multiple radar systems on board. There's one in the nose. There's a radar system in that big M&M looking fairing on the bottom of the airplane. That's our multi-mode radar. So that one scans out at about at a distance about 300 miles. And so as we're flying into the storm, we can use that picture to give us an idea of the storm structure, really kind of what we're getting into, and then plan our attack to go in from there. 4 propeller engines, plenty of horsepower to keep us going, even in the strongest winds. Out here on the wing, this pylon normally has some laser instruments inside of it that are cloud physics probes, and they'll sample water droplet size, speed, and direction. They're currently still being calibrated in the lab, so we haven't installed them for the season yet, but they'll be on there soon enough. As we come around this way, along the bottom of the aircraft, we've got a lot of different instrument ports where we'll mount things like LiDARs, other radar systems, things that measure significant wave heights, wave speeds, ocean sea surface temperatures. There's also a lot of chutes or tubes along the bottom of the aircraft. That's where we'll launch instruments like dropsondes, drones, ocean drifting buoys, all different kinds of things to collect as much data as we can. And then most importantly, on the tail of the aircraft, in that big bulb back there, is our tail Doppler radar. And so that system has two dishes in it. One looks forward, one looks aft. And as we're flying through the storm, they're scanning vertically from the sea surface up to the tops of the clouds. And so it's sort of like taking a CAT scan of the storm. And so the researchers, the scientists, can push all that data back together at the end of it and get a good, clear picture of how the storm is developing and how it's strengthening.
And so you guys work as a team specifically, but as an engineer, what is your job on the plane?
Typically my job on the aircraft is to sit in the back and launch dropsondes, drones, whatever other expendables are required for that particular mission.
And what's your favorite part?
Really, it's just the team that we get to work with. Everyone here, the pilots, the flight directors, the engineers, the technicians, everyone has so much skill and so much knowledge, and it's really incredible to see all of that come together and allow us to do this effectively and safely.
And why do you fly into hurricanes? Why did you choose to do this?
I enjoy public service, and I like the impact that the mission really has. The data that we're collecting feeds the forecast models that predict where the storm's going to go and how strong they're going to get. And the better job we can do up in the air, the more accurate those predictions will be, and the earlier we can give people a warning that a storm's coming their way.
That's the whole goal, right?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much for being here, Nick. Thank you. Appreciate for the work that you do as well.
All right, thank you.
All right, well that is it from behind the scenes here at the NOAA Aircraft Operations Center in Lakeland, Florida. In Florida, I'm Amanda Holly.
Certainly a very important job, but I'm not sure that I could take the bumps and the long rides that they take.
Yeah, I don't have the stomach for that. I actually interviewed Nick Underwood myself a couple of years ago, and I asked him that very question, like, hey, how often do people, get sick on the plane? And he said everyone has their own remedy. For him, he likes to go out with a full stomach. I was like, for me, that would just be more contents to be expelled as I was bouncing up and down on the plane. I have no will to do that. I know there's a lot of Mets out there that would just love to fly into a hurricane. I know I would get sick. I don't want to do it.
I probably would too, but maybe one day both of us can give it a shot.
No, I think you're that's you, man.
Yeah.
I'm passing.
I'll take one for the team. But of course, before hurricane season gets here, we are in the month of May. We'll talk about what we've seen so far and what's to come as the month unfolds, coming up after this break. Welcome back once again to this episode of Off the Radar. We talked about the new month of May now being underway, and it certainly was a very cold start to the month back on Sunday, all the way down to 40 degrees in Raleigh. That was the coldest May morning since back in 2021, almost 5 years ago. And how about below freezing in places like Siler City? 30 degrees tied their record low set back in 1978.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was doing the forecast Saturday night, right? When this happened Sunday morning, correct? And Saturday night, I think at midnight when we were on the air, it was 38 degrees in Siler City, and I think RDU was sitting at like 46, something like that. And I looked at that and I was like, I'm not sure I believe that. Is it really 38 degrees in Siler City? And then I came in the next day and you had this graphic already made that was Siler City down to 30. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that. That's crazy. But hey, cold air is cold air.
And typically we see our final freeze of the season across this portion of North Carolina the first week of April. So it's not unheard of, but still kind of unusual to have temperatures below freezing this late in the season.
Yeah, kind of the pattern that we have going on. And we're going to benefit from that, really, because this is part of the reason why we've been getting some moisture as we get these deeper troughs that are hanging around and the storm path has been a little closer to us. So good for us, because obviously April was miserably hot and very, very dry.
So many 80s to start the month. Last month seeing 86 degrees as the warmest day back then. The coolest time was just 77 degrees the first 5 days. The exact opposite into this month. The coolest day all the way down to 58 degrees on a cloudy and at times drizzly day. The warmest day being a couple of days ago at 84 degrees, but the coolest low, of course, being 40. And still a dry start to the month, officially just 5/100ths of an inch of rain at the airport. At this point last month, seeing a 1/10 of an inch of rain at RDU, but still signs are pointing towards better rain chances and in fact soaking rain chances over the next week or so.
Yeah, we'll take every drop that we can get. And I think it was you and I that were willing to start the petition in April to get all the pools to open. And then the splash pads and a lot of pools around the area did open this past weekend. And we saw temperatures in the 50s and 60s for daytime highs on Saturday and Sunday. So nature doing that cruel ha-ha where it's like, hey, it's really hot when you don't want it to be, and then when you do want it to be, it's going to be cold. So doing a little flip-flop on us there. But as you mentioned, some soaking rain on the way, and that is excellent news.
But we have plenty of days to look forward to in the summer where it's going to be 95 to 100 degrees every single day. So we'll take the 50s and 60s while we have them.
Yeah, and we got rain that is, we're recording this on a Wednesday, but we got rain that is coming for Thursday if you're watching this, which will likely air Friday.
Yes.
You're watching this on Friday. The rain has already
happened. You should have gotten rain, yes.
It has already happened. No, we're meteorologists, man. We're confident in our forecast.
Yes.
The rain has already happened. We had a good, heavy, soaking rain. We saw 3/4 to an inch and then plus across the area because we're optimistic here, and we want all the rain we can get. And we've got heavy rain in the forecast again coming for next week. Of course, by the time this airs, we're going to have that forecast refined for you. But as of now, there's still a little ambiguity into next week's outlook. But it does look like another good soaker potentially on the way.
And of course, rain aside, there are some big changes on the way over the course of this month. We kind of touched upon this in the last episode, but the average high goes from 77 degrees all the way to 84, the average low 54 to 62. The thing that I'm most excited about is the longer amount of daylight, increasing 46 minutes over the course of this month. In fact, every single day gets at least 1, if not 2 minutes longer. Now, I will say, unfortunately, this is typically our peak tornado season in central North Carolina, but so far so good this severe weather season, seeing the rain chances in store this week without that severe component.
Yeah, because typically this time of year we start to see the heat building a little further off to our south. We still have some cold air around. We get the storm track, kind of like what is in place now, and that helps to create that pocket that we're looking for severe weather. So little plug for ourselves. Watch on the radar, where we break down daily where you see these severe weather outlooks and why those are happening. And you can educate yourself so that you don't have to listen to us drone on whenever. You can actually see exactly where that severe weather is happening, and you can be kind of your own forecaster. Not that we're not important. I'm not. Just watch us.
You kind of get the heads up the day of or the day leading up to, instead of like the week prior or talking about stuff that might happen later on in the week. It's actually as it's happening right then.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, of course, this has been a very busy year so far as the overall heat has been, and as far as the dry conditions have seen. Now we're going to talk about our drought that is still continuing on and still kind of on the bad side, but at least those rain chances are on the way. But how much would it take to get us out of this drought? We'll talk about that in the final segment right after this. We are back once again for this episode of Off the Radar. We talked about how dry it has been so far this year, but the rain chances that are on the way. This is the latest drought monitor that came out last Thursday. Of course, a new one likely coming out before you see this episode, but this is the most recent one that we have in, and it shows a small area just to the east of the Charlotte area with exceptional drought. The first time we have seen exceptional drought in the state in almost a decade. Much of the region has that extreme drought, including now 70% of Wake County. And it breaks down kind of as the map shows here, that 1% of the state in the D4 level, about 55% in D3, and 100% of the state has some drought of some form, every single one of our 100 counties. But hopefully with the rain chances in store, we slowly start to whittle some of this away in the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, so most people, and including a lot of meteorologists, unless you're dealing with drought a lot, you probably don't understand what any of this means and why when we get repetitive rain, we don't just see drought disappear. That's because it takes a while for drought to build up. There's really three determinations of drought. You have short-term, long-term drought, and then the duration, meaning how long is the drought standing. So if you look back on our deficit and when it began, we're about 15 inches below where we should be if you go back to, say, September of last year. However, if you're just looking at the average from where we're at, yeah, great graphic. I didn't know you were going to pull that up, but hey, whatever.
Always have something ready for you.
Yeah, that was perfect. So if you're going back to that, you can see how repetitively dry we have been. And that's important because every day, technically, we are falling behind if we're not getting moisture. Now, obviously, it doesn't rain every day, but the way the weather works is we work on averages. So we're talking about CLIMO, or our average, what it should be for the day. That is an average of highs and lows combined to give us what the median temperature is in that period. Rain works the same way. Just about every day, we should be picking up about 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of rain. That gets compensated by when we see these 1 to 3 inch rainfall dumps that get really mulled out across the long duration average. When you don't get any of those, then you start to really build in those days where you're getting no rain, and then you don't get a heavy dump to help compensate for the days that you're getting no rain, then you get drought. And that's exactly what has happened. Is we've gone from a dry period to a dry period, and in a period where we should be getting a lot more rain, and we've had basically none. So that's how we got here, and that lowers the levels of your groundwater, your rivers, your streams, and your reservoirs, and it takes a long time for all of that to become saturated and filter back into those areas. So heavy rain sounds really good, and you would love to get 10 inches of rain in a day, help kill the drought, if you will. But all that really would do is refill our streams and reservoirs. It really wouldn't be that great for our groundwater or ground levels because most of that water would run off. It would not be soaked into the ground. So that would still be be a type of drought, even though by rainfall we would be caught up.
You're talking about it takes likely several events to slowly get us out of this, but you were kind of mentioning too, all the way back to last year, these numbers are astounding, seeing more than 5, 6, 7 months in a row with below average rainfall, the one exception being back in February of this year, but even then it was just a little less than 1/4 of an inch of a rain surplus, and also the fact that it would take more than a foot in some cases to get us out of the drought in just 1 month. This is the latest from CPC, talking about 11 to 14 inches across our area, 10 to 11 inches down towards the coast, and even a bullseye where that exceptional drought is, it would take more than 15 inches of rainfall in just 1 month. Of course, we don't want to see that because that would lead to flooding, and as you mentioned, not really helping us in the long term, but still, that's how much it would take to entirely get us out.
Yeah, and if you think back to, not to pour salt in the wound here, but you think about to the snowstorm that Wake County really missed out on, and everyone else got, it was a very dry snow. It didn't have a whole lot of liquid equivalency to the amount of snow that actually did fall across the area, so that didn't help. The winter storms that we had happened with very cold temperatures, which means we saw decent accumulations across many areas, but we didn't actually see a whole lot of water based out of that. So those storms that didn't come with a whole lot of moisture. And it's been the same way since, even as we've gotten out of the winter precip. Every rain event we've had 1/4 of an inch or less. And in April, we saw less than an inch of rain for the entire month. And in that last event, where a lot of places south of the triangle picked up a good bit, 1/2 an inch to about an inch, RDU and further off to the north, nothing, basically.
Yeah, not much at all, if anything.
5/100ths of an inch is basically drizzling for 15 minutes. So absolutely nothing. So we need a lot of rain, and it's going to take a while to get there. It'll probably take until the end of summer, probably the end of the year, before we're talking about us not being in any kind of drought anymore, and lots of moisture. You're going to be really tired of rain by the time we're saying, hey, the drought is gone. You're going to be like, who cares?
It's been so rainy for months. So, but it all evens out at the end. Hopefully we do see rain chances come back, and yes, it is going to be kind of a plan buster, but it is going to help us out in the long run.
Yeah. So hopefully this wet pattern we're in now continues. We'll hope to see that. It looks likely that as we go through at least the middle to end of May that we're going to see the same kind of weather pattern holding on. So that's good news. The last couple of weeks have been a very nice pattern for us. And over the next 7 days, it looks very, very nice. Yeah. So as this rain has already fallen on Thursday, we've already seen an inch across the
it's already happened.
We've got a potential for another inch on the way as we go into either Sunday or Monday. Timing differences there based on whatever model you subscribe to. But it looks likely that we're going to get another nice rainfall event as we go through the early portion of the week. And already looking forward, it looks like we've got some more moisture chances down the road as well. Not a very strong signal like what we've seen for this Thursday or what we see early next week, but still, we'll take rain chances as long as they want to stick around.
I mean, 1/10, 2/10 on any given day is always certainly very helpful. Now, this is going to come over the next 7 days combined. It's not going to be on any one day, but it is going to take likely probably close to a tropical storm level moisture event to slowly get us out of this drought. Of course, we don't want to see that push its way towards the area, but still signs are pointing towards better things as we head towards the later part of May and into June. Thankfully, the rain chances are on a comeback, and hopefully that keeps our temperatures on the cool side too. Of course, you'll see the 90s and 100s before you know it, and then we'll be complaining about that too.
Yeah, we're going to go from hot and dry to wet and wet. I don't know. That's what we need anyway.
Yeah, we do. The typical pop-up summer showers and storms once again.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take the pop-up stuff. I'm thinking we might see like a week of rain in June or July, and we're going to be like, this is not summer. This is.
Then you want it to be dry once again.
Then we're going to be like, where are the mosquito? We need some mosquito control.
That is the bad part. The mosquitoes and the grass growing too.
Oh, and the grass growing. Yeah. Thankfully, I got a tiny yard, so I don't have to worry about that. You, Mr. Riding Lawnmower.
I know. Got so much to cut. Not looking forward to that, but we are looking forward to the next episode of Off the Radar. We'll see you at this time next week. Until then, hopefully you have seen some rain, and hopefully you have a great week as well. We'll see you next week.